Welcome to the Working Equitation New Zealand Objective Judging System. Whether you're joining us as a judge, rider, coach, or organiser, thank you for taking the time to learn about this exciting new approach to judging. This presentation isn't simply about learning a new marking scale, it's about understanding the philosophy behind the marks we award and how consistent judging can positively influence the way horses are trained. Our aim is to make judging more objective, more transparent, and more consistent, while encouraging training that promotes confidence, harmony, and good horse welfare. Throughout this presentation, we'll explore the thinking behind the WENZ judging system, explain how the descriptors work, and most importantly, develop a common language that helps judges reward the qualities we want to see repeated throughout our sport. By the end of this presentation, my hope is that you'll not only understand the judging scale, but also feel confident applying it consistently and fairly. So let's begin by looking at perhaps the most important question of all. Why does judging matter? Before we start talking about judging scales and descriptors, I'd like you to think about one simple idea. Judges shape training. Every score we award sends a message to riders about what we value. Riders naturally train towards the qualities that are awarded in competition. If we consistently reward calmness, rhythm, and harmony, those qualities become the focus of training. If we reward tension, conflict, or shortcuts, whether intentionally or not, those behaviours can become normalised. In other words, judging doesn't simply determine the placings on the day, it influences the direction of our sport for years to come. That's a huge responsibility, but it's also an incredible opportunity. As judges, we have the ability to encourage better communication between horse and rider, improve training standards, and ultimately improve horse welfare. Every mark we award teaches the rider something. The question we should always ask ourselves is, what lesson is this score teaching? Throughout this presentation, that's the question I'd like you to keep in the back of your mind. Let's take that idea one step further. Every score we award sends a message to the rider about what we value. That message doesn't stop when the competition finishes. It goes home with the rider and influences what they practice in their next training session. If judges consistently reward calmness, rhythm, and harmony, riders begin training to achieve these qualities. Over time, that changes the way horses are educated. Better training produces better behaviour. Horses become calmer, more confident, and more willing because they're trained towards qualities that we have consistently recognised and rewarded. Ultimately, that leads to improved horse welfare. So, although it may seem like we're simply awarding a mark out of 10, we're actually influencing something much bigger. Every score contributes to the future direction of our sport. That's why consistency between judges is so important. If every judge rewards the same observable qualities, every rider receives the same message about what good training looks like. That's the foundation of this objective judging system. What should we actually be rewarding? The answer to that question forms the foundation of the entire WENZ objective judging system. We've identified the qualities that we believe produce not only successful working equitation horses, but horses that are confident, willing, and enjoyable to ride. The first quality is freedom from conflict. We want horses that understand the rider's aids and respond willingly without fear, resistance, or confusion. From there, we reward calmness. A calm horse is able to learn, to think clearly, and to perform consistently. Once we have a calm horse, we can begin to look for rhythm because rhythm is one of the clearest indicators of relaxation, understanding, and self-maintenance. From rhythm, we progress to alignment. Is the horse straight when it should be straight? Is it correctly bent when it should be bent? Then we reward balance. Specifically, we're looking for a horse that is carrying itself in an uphill way rather than traveling on the forehand. From there, we look at posture. The horse should demonstrate an appropriate frame and way of going. Finally, when all of those qualities come together with exceptional poise, precision, and harmony, we recognize an exemplary performance. As you'll see throughout the rest of this presentation, these qualities aren't independent of one another. They build progressively, with each one creating the foundation for the next. That's why excellence can never exist without strong foundations. Before we look at how the objective judging system works, it's worth asking why we've developed it in the first place. Traditional judging has served equestrian sport for many years, and experienced judges develop an excellent eye for quality. However, because much of that judgment is based on experience and personal interpretation, two judges may sometimes reward slightly different aspects of the same performance. For riders, that can make marks difficult to understand. They may know what score they received, but not always why they received it, or what they need to do to improve and earn a higher mark next time. The purpose of objective judging is not to remove the judge's experience or expertise, quite the opposite. It provides a common framework that allows every judge to apply that expertise more consistently. Instead of asking, did I like that performance? We ask, what observable qualities did I actually see? By using clear descriptors, judges are looking for the same qualities, speaking the same language, and rewarding the same behaviours. That creates greater consistency between judges, gives riders clearer feedback, and most importantly, rewards the qualities that promote good training and good horse welfare. Objective judging doesn't remove judgment, it simply makes the reasons behind our decisions clearer and more transparent. Everything we've talked about so far comes down to one simple principle: reward the qualities. Don't judge the outcome alone. Judge the qualities that produced that outcome. Because when we consistently reward the right qualities, excellence becomes the natural result. So what are the qualities we're actually looking for every time a horse and rider negotiate a movement in the flat work test or an obstacle in the ease of handling? Although every exercise is different, the qualities we're assessing remain remarkably consistent. We begin with correct geometry. Has the rider ridden the intended line or pattern? From there we look at rhythm. Is the horse maintaining a pure, regular rhythm and tempo without constant correction or aiding from the rider? Once rhythm is established, we assess alignment. Is the horse straight when it should be and correctly bent when it should be? Then we look at an uphill balance where the horse begins to demonstrate self-carriage rather than relying on the rider for support. Finally, we assess posture, the overall picture of the horse and rider working together in balance with an appropriate frame and way of going. These qualities don't stand alone. Each one depends on the one before it. As you'll soon see, this progressive way of thinking forms the foundation of the entire WENZ judges scale. One of the strengths of the WENZ judging system is that it provides a simple and logical progression as horse and rider move through the levels. Rather than changing what we consider to be good riding, we keep our expectations of quality remarkably consistent. What changes is the technical difficulty of the exercises. As riders progress, they're asked to perform more complex movements, negotiate more demanding obstacles, and demonstrate a greater degree of skill and precision. The horse isn't expected to become a different horse simply because it moves up a level. Instead, we're asking for the same qualities to be demonstrated while performing increasingly challenging tasks. This approach creates a clear pathway for riders, judges, and coaches because everyone understands the goal remains the same. The exercises become harder, but the qualities we reward do not. In the next slide, we'll look more closely at what that means in practice. One philosophy, every level. Now let's look at how this philosophy applies from preparatory through to medium level. As riders move up through the grades, the exercises become progressively more difficult. Riders are expected to perform more technical movements, ride with greater accuracy, flying changes are introduced, and eventually one-handed riding. But notice what doesn't change. We're still looking for exactly the same qualities. We want to see a calm horse, a clear rhythm, correct alignment, and uphill balance and appropriate posture. One of the things that makes working equitation quite unique is that people enter the sport from many different backgrounds. It's not unusual to see highly educated horses beginning their working equitation journey at preliminary level alongside combinations that are completely new to the sport. That's why it's so important that we don't judge the lower levels to a lower standard. If we did, we'd lose the ability to recognize and reward combinations demonstrating greater quality, balance, and harmony. We'd also lose the spread of marks that allows judges to fairly distinguish between developing performances and those demonstrating a higher quality of training and execution. Even the simpler obstacles at walk and trot require balance, responsiveness, and accuracy. Working equitation is a discipline that values collection and self-carriage from the very beginning. The degree of collection required is naturally less than for more advanced exercises, but the qualities we're rewarding are exactly the same. So we don't lower our expectations of quality. We simply ask horse and rider to demonstrate those same qualities while performing increasingly difficult exercises. That's why this philosophy is so simple. We don't change our standards, we change the challenges. So where does the journey go after medium level? The WENZ objective judging system has been designed to build strong foundations through the introductory and national levels. By the time combinations reach the higher grades, they should already understand the qualities that create good working equitation horses. For advanced and masters level, judging transitions to the international WAWI judging system. That doesn't mean we're changing philosophy, in fact, quite the opposite. Our aim is to prepare horses, riders, and judges with the fundamental understanding they'll need to succeed under international judging. By establishing clear, objective standards early, the transition to WAWI becomes much more natural for those horses and riders with the ability to do so. In other words, we're not creating a different pathway, we're building the first part of the same pathway. A strong foundation at national level gives riders the best possible opportunity to progress confidently into the international stage if they so desire. Before we continue with the objective judging scale, it's important to understand that there is one exception. Introductory is the only level that does not use the cumulative objective judging scale used from preparatory through to medium levels. That's because introductory has a different purpose. It exists to provide a safe, supportive, and encouraging environment for horses and riders who are beginning their working equitation journey. Rather than rewarding advanced training, introductory rewards the qualities that underpin success at every level of the sport: confidence, calmness, understanding, and partnership. These qualities become the foundation upon which all future training is built. Because the purpose of introductory is different, the descriptors are different too. They have been deliberately written to reflect the journey of a new horse and rider learning together. Instead of measuring increasing technical quality, they measure progression. The scale moves from learning to growing confidence to developing harmony and finally to an exemplary partnership. Every descriptor encourages riders to keep moving forward while recognizing good training and good horsemanship. Let's take a closer look at how those descriptors fit together. The lower marks recognize horses that are still learning or finding the exercises difficult. As understanding develops, we begin to reward calm, recognizable performances where the horse clearly understands the task. From there, the emphasis shifts to confidence, where the horse performs willingly and competently. Finally, the highest marks recognize genuine harmony between horse and rider, culminating in an exemplary partnership. The descriptors are designed to reward progress, not perfection. They provide a clear pathway that encourages horses and riders to develop confidence first, because confidence is the foundation of future performance. From preparatory level onwards, judging becomes cumulative, but in two distinct ways. The lower half of the scale describes qualities that limit performance. Conflict, resistance, stress, and poor geometry each represent different observations that prevent a higher mark from being awarded. As these undesirable qualities reduce, the score can increase. Once a horse reaches a mark of 5, the focus changes. From this point onwards, every higher mark builds upon the qualities of the one before it. A horse cannot be rhythmic unless it is already calm and doing recognizable geometry. It cannot be aligned unless rhythm has first been established. It cannot demonstrate an uphill balance unless alignment has been achieved. And posture and exemplary performance can only be rewarded once all of those foundational qualities are already present. This creates a judge's system that rewards observable qualities in a logical progression that follows the training scale, whilst also recognizing the factors that limit performance. Rather than asking, "What do I think this movement deserved?" we ask, "What qualities did I actually observe?" That simple shift is what makes objective judging more consistent, more transparent, and ultimately better for horses and riders. Now that we've established the philosophy behind the scale, let's see how it works in practice. So how do we actually apply this system when we're sitting at sea or judging an obstacle? The answer is surprisingly simple. For every movement in the flatwork phase and every obstacle in the ease of handling phase, we ask ourselves exactly the same series of questions. Was the movement or obstacle completed? Did I observe conflict, resistance, or stress? Was the geometry or line of travel recognizable? Did the horse maintain rhythm? Was there correct bend and alignment? Did the horse demonstrate an uphill balance and self-carriage? Was the horse and rider's posture appropriate for the exercise? And finally, was there that extra degree of quality, precision, and harmony that lifts the performance into the very highest of marks? By asking the same questions every time, we remove much of the guesswork from judging. Instead of deciding on a mark first and then trying to justify it, we simply observe the qualities in front of us and allow those observations to lead us naturally to the correct score. That consistency is what objective judging is all about. One of the biggest changes in objective judging is that we stop looking for faults and start looking for qualities. Traditionally, judges often begin by asking themselves, what went wrong? How many mistakes did I see? The mark then becomes a series of deductions from an imagined perfect score. But that's not how this system works. Instead, we ask a different set of questions. What qualities did I actually observe? Which descriptor on the judging scale best matches those qualities? And therefore, what mark is the most appropriate? This is a subtle change in thinking, but it's a very powerful one. It keeps our focus on what the horse and rider demonstrated rather than what we expect them to do. Two tests may contain exactly the same mistake, yet still deserve different marks because the overall quality of the performance was different. Likewise, a technically difficult movement isn't automatically worthy of a higher score. We reward the quality of the execution, not simply the difficulty of the exercise. Objective judging isn't about finding faults. It's about accurately recognizing and rewarding the qualities that were demonstrated. One of the easiest mistakes a judge can make is to think that each mark stands on its own. In reality, that's not how the objective judging scale works. Every mark tells a story about the quality that was demonstrated. A 5 tells us the movement was completed successfully and was recognizable, but there were some of the higher qualities not yet consistently present. A 7 tells us that everything required for a 6 was also present, with the addition of correct alignment through the horse's body. And a 9 tells us that all of the qualities needed for the lower marks have been demonstrated, with the added quality of correct posture, collection, and self-carriage. In other words, higher marks don't replace the qualities below them, they include them. As judges, we're always asking ourselves, what qualities have I observed? The more qualities that are consistently demonstrated, the higher the mark naturally becomes. That's why the scale is cumulative. It gives us a logical pathway from a recognizable performance through to an exceptional one, and it follows the training scale. By now, we've covered the philosophy behind objective judging. We've talked about rewarding qualities, using consistent descriptors, and building marks based on what we actually observe. But when the horse enters the arena or begins an obstacle, everything comes down to three simple questions. First, was the movement successfully demonstrated? If it wasn't completed or couldn't be recognized, that immediately guides us towards the lower end of the scale. Second, what qualities did I observe? Not what I hoped to see, not what I expected to see, simply what was actually demonstrated in that performance. Did I see calmness, rhythm, alignment, and uphill balance, or good posture? Finally, which descriptor best matches those qualities? Once we've answered those first two questions honestly, the appropriate mark usually becomes quite obvious. Notice what we don't do. We don't start by choosing a number. We don't think that looked like about a 7. Instead, we observe first, evaluate second, and only then do we decide on the score. If you follow these three questions for every movement and every obstacle, you'll find your judging becomes more consistent, more objective, and much easier to explain. So far, we've explored the philosophies behind objective judging and the thinking process we use to arrive at a mark. Now it's time to put it into practice. In the next section, we'll work through the judges' scale one mark at a time. We'll look at what each mark represents, the kinds of qualities you would expect to observe, and the situations where the mark would be appropriate. Remember, these aren't rigid checklists. They are guides that help us consistently match what we've observed to the most appropriate descriptor. Let's begin with the easiest mark to identify, a score of 0. A 0 doesn't mean the horse performed badly. It simply means that there was no completed performance available to judge. In the ease of handling phase, this is relatively straightforward. An obstacle may not have been attempted, it may not have been completed successfully, The cup may be dropped, the spear lost, the jump knocked down, or the rider may fail to complete the obstacle as required under the rules. In these situations, the obstacle hasn't been successfully performed, so the correct mark is 0. The flat work phase is a little different. It's very unusual to award a 0 because an omitted movement is normally treated as a course error and the rider is given the opportunity to repeat the movement. Once the movement has been performed, it can be judged on its quality. The key principle is simple. If there is no completed performance, there are no qualities to assess. Only once a movement or obstacle has been successfully completed do we begin judging the quality of what was demonstrated. Once a movement or obstacle has been completed, the first thing we ask ourselves is whether the horse showed conflict. Conflict is characterized by major behaviors such as bucking, rearing, bolting, or any other significant response that clearly indicates the horse is struggling to cope with the task being asked of it. These behaviors are not simply mistakes, they are an important indicator of the horse's welfare and understanding. A score of 1 tells us that conflict is the defining feature of the performance. It doesn't matter whether there were moments of good rhythm or reasonable geometry. Once major conflict is demonstrated in what we've observed, those qualities can no longer be rewarded appropriately. This is one of the fundamental principles of objective judging. We don't reward performances where the horse is showing severe conflict because our role as judges is to encourage training that produces calm, willing, and confident horses. As judges, we're not simply assessing technical performance, we're also sending a message about the kind of training and horse behavior our sport values. A score of 2 describes a performance where the horse is still attempting the movement or obstacle, but resistance is the defining characteristic. Resistance might include behaviors such as a large shy, stopping dead, kicking out at the leg, or opposing the rider's aids. The horse is still participating, but the quality of the performance is significantly limited by the resistance. The important distinction between a score of 1 and 2 is that the horse has not moved into major conflict. Control has been maintained and the task is still being attempted, but the resistance is substantial enough that it dominates what the judge observes. Again, because resistance is the defining quality of the performance, it prevents the movement from being awarded for higher qualities such as rhythm, alignment, or posture. Remember, our role is not simply to score technical accuracy, we are rewarding performances that demonstrate willing, confident communication between horse and rider. A score of 3 is awarded when the movement or obstacle is completed, but stress is the defining feature of the performance. Unlike a score of 2, where the horse is actively resisting the rider, a stressed horse may still comply with the rider's aids and complete the task. However, signs of stress are clearly evident throughout the performance. These signs might include repeated tail swishing, a flight posture, constant breaking of gait, high levels of tension, or other behaviors that indicate the horse is struggling emotionally with the task. The horse has completed the movement, but the quality of the performance is limited because stress is dominating what we observe. One of the key principles of the WENZ judging system is that we do not reward performances achieved through stress. A stressed horse cannot demonstrate the relaxation, rhythm, balance, and harmony that higher marks represent. As judges, our responsibility is to recognize those signs objectively and allow them to influence the mark appropriately. A score of 4 represents an important turning point in the judging scale. By this point, the horse is calm enough to complete the movement or obstacle. Stress and resistance are no longer the defining feature of the performance. However, the geometry or line of travel is still well below the standard required. The rider may take an incorrect line, ride an excessively large or small shape, lose accuracy through the obstacle, or touch the obstacle because of poor positioning. The movement has been completed, but it is not yet accurately recognizable. That is why a 4 sits immediately below a 5. Before we can begin rewarding qualities like rhythm, alignment, and balance, the movement itself must first be ridden with recognizable geometry. Once the geometry becomes recognizable, the performance moves into the 5 and above range, where we can begin rewarding quality. A score of 5 is where the positive side of the judging scale begins. By this point, the horse is reasonably calm, the movement or obstacle has been successfully completed, and the geometry is clearly recognizable. In other words, the rider has demonstrated the movement being asked for. This is an important milestone because from this point onwards, we can begin rewarding quality. However, a score of 5 is still the foundation, not the finished product. The movement or obstacle may lack consistent rhythm. The horse may not yet be truly balanced. It may be downhill on the forehand, and alignment may be inconsistent with incorrect bend throughout the movement. And there is not yet sufficient self-carriage or posture for the higher marks. Think of a 5 as saying, yes, you've successfully demonstrated the movement or obstacle. Now let's start looking for some quality. Every score above 5 builds upon this foundation by adding one quality after another. Without a recognizable, calmly performed movement, there is no platform on which to reward rhythm, alignment, balance, or posture. A score of 6 includes everything required for a 5, but now we add the first true quality, which is rhythm. The movement is still calm and recognizable, but now the horse maintains a pure gait with a consistent rhythm and tempo throughout the movement or obstacle. The horse is traveling willingly, the tempo is largely self-maintained, and the rider is no longer needing repeated large aids to keep the horse going or regulate the pace. This is the first point on the scale where we begin rewarding how the horse performs the movement, not simply recognizing that it has been completed. However, while the rhythm is now consistent, the horse may still lack consistent bend and alignment. It may drift through turns, lose straightness, or show inconsistent positioning through the obstacle. That's why a 6 remains a rhythm mark. Alignment is the next quality we reward. A score of 7 includes everything required of a 6, but now we add another important quality, alignment. The horse maintains a consistent rhythm and tempo, but is now also correctly aligned for the movement being performed. Whether traveling straight or on a curve, the horse demonstrates appropriate bend or straightness with the body following the intended line. Importantly, this alignment is achieved without losing the rhythm that earned the score of 6. At this level, we also expect the horse to be traveling in a balanced frame. The horse should no longer be downhill noticeably or predominantly behind the vertical, as these postures make correct alignment difficult to achieve. However, while the horse is now rhythmic and correctly aligned, it has not yet developed the uphill balance and increasing weight carrying ability required for even higher marks. Alignment is the bridge between rhythm and collection. It creates the straightness and balance that allow the horse to progress towards an uphill way of going. A score of 8 includes everything required for a 7, but now we add another significant quality, an uphill way of going. The horse maintains calmness, rhythm, and alignment, but now also demonstrates improved balance and self-carriage. Rather than traveling on the forehand, the horse is beginning to shift more weight onto the hindquarters, allowing the forehand to become lighter and the movement to appear more effortless. This improved balance enables the horse to negotiate movements and obstacles with greater ease, precision, and athleticism. The rider also reflects this balance, maintaining an effective, well-balanced position without needing to support or hold the horse together. This is an important distinction. An uphill horse isn't simply carrying its head higher, it's carrying its whole self better. However, while the horse now demonstrates all of these qualities, there is still another level to achieve. The final marks rewarded not only just excellent performances, but a truly polished, harmonious picture where both horse and rider demonstrate exceptional posture and presentation. An 8 is an excellent performance. A 9 adds final refinement. A score of 9 includes everything required for an 8, but now we add the next quality, that of posture. The horse continues to demonstrate calmness, rhythm, alignment, and an uphill balance, but now shows a higher degree of self-carriage, appropriate collection for the level and for what is required of those obstacles, and a beautifully organized frame. The rider also reflects this quality, sitting in balance with quiet, effective aids that allow the horse to perform with confidence and self-carriage. By this stage, the performance appears polished. The horse is not simply completing the movement correctly, it's performing it with ease, balance, and expression. It is important to remember that the collection we reward is always appropriate for the level being ridden. We are not expecting a preparatory horse to show the same degree of collection as a medium horse. We are rewarding the best posture and self-carriage appropriate for the technical demands of the exercise. A score of 9 represents a performance where all of the qualities we've discussed are clearly evident. The only thing separating from a 10 is that final touch of brilliance that makes the performance truly exceptional. A score of 10 represents an exemplary performance for that level. Everything required for a 9 is still present. The movement is accurate, the horse is calm, balanced, and correctly postured, and the rider is effective yet almost invisible. But a score of 10 has something more. It has an unmistakable sense of poise, grace, and flair. Horse and rider perform with complete confidence and harmony. The movement appears effortless, flowing naturally from beginning to end, almost as though horse and rider are dancing together. There is precision without tension, expression without force, and elegance without sacrificing correctness. Nothing looks manufactured or difficult. Instead, the performance leaves the judge thinking, that was a pleasure to watch. A 10 isn't awarded because the movement was merely completed correctly. It's awarded because every quality has come together to create an outstanding performance that sets the benchmark for that level. Remember, our goal as judges isn't simply to identify mistakes. It's to recognize and reward the qualities we want every rider to aspire to. When we consistently reward those qualities, we help shape the future of working equitation. Throughout this presentation, we've explored how objective judging provides a consistent, transparent, and educational framework for evaluating performance. But objective judging is about far more than simply awarding marks. Every score we give communicates what we value. Over time, those scores influence how riders train, how horses are educated, and ultimately the future direction of our sport. When we consistently reward calmness, confidence, rhythm, alignment, balance, self-carriage, and harmony, we encourage riders to develop those same qualities in their horses. In doing so, judging becomes a powerful tool for improving both performance and horse welfare. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Dr. Andrew McLean, whose pioneering work first proposed the concept of objective judging for equestrian sport and inspired many of the principles that underpin this system. Working Equitation New Zealand is proud to be leading the way by adopting an objective judging system that is educational, transparent, and welfare focused. Whether you're judging, riding, coaching, or stewarding, you are helping shape the future of our sport. Thank you for taking the time to complete this module, and thank you for being part of that future.